every problem, there's a solution. Dear Phil, on Tip Today with Phil Prendergast.
Good morning, Phil. How are you?
Very well, Fran. How are you?
Do you know what? I can't complain, because if I do, there'll be trouble around here, so I better not say anything, Phil. So will we launch in?
We'll go straight into it.
All right, letter number 1. Dear Phil, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer last year, and while we knew our time was going to be quite short, we tried to fill it as much as we could with positive memories. My problem now is that my dad has gone very downhill in recent weeks and is now confined to bed. It's now just a matter of time. I thought I had prepared myself for this. I knew it was coming, but it's hitting differently than how I thought. I always imagined that I would be at his bedside and it would all be calm and peaceful, but I can't bring myself to go there. I find I'm spending less and less time with him and doing anything I can not to be in the room with him. My sister has noticed and is trying to coax me to stay for longer, but I just can't do it. I feel like a coward, and I feel like I'm letting him down. It's not that he's in distress, because he isn't. It's just that he looks different with a massive weight loss, and he looks nothing like the man that I looked up to all my life. Sometimes I even find myself wishing that he would just die so I didn't have to feel guilty any longer, and then I feel guilt for wishing that. I just don't know how to deal with watching this wonderful, lovely man slowly dying in front of my eyes. My other family don't feel the same. Why is it just me that's being a coward?
You see, she's not being a coward at all. It's a natural, very natural reaction when somebody is at the end of life, and her father isn't aware that she's not. She's putting herself under a lot of pressure, I think, you know, just to have, I suppose, that she feels that she wants to be there for him and all the rest of it. You can only do so much. And I think it's probably very, very difficult when you're not coming to terms with something that's inevitable and it's facing us all. You know, if there's nobody going to escape this, nobody can just say, puff, I'm gone.
Of course, yeah.
So, you know, she says that she's trying to have good, positive memories. Well, there's lots and lots of positive memories she will have from all of her life knowing her dad. So because this is a very emotional time, and it is, when somebody changes to that extent and they're near the end of life, they're not really aware of what's going on around them that much, because they're busy dying. And I suppose usually at this stage of life as well, when somebody has a diagnosis with cancer and they're on medication, and really the medication can put them out of range of knowing what's going on for everyone else.
And that's your experience of that,
Absolutely,
Phil? Yes.
absolutely.
Okay.
And I remember when my own dad was dying, he was diagnosed and dead within 3 weeks. Now, he had a great 3 weeks. He had the best friends around, and pints came across the green Ballyraggett. It was very funny. But, you know, he died, and I and my brother that lives in Finland were the only two that weren't there with him. But, you know, it's a sad time, but it's an inevitable part of living, is to be facing death at some point.
It's a pity that she's questioning herself and she's feeling guilty herself for what seems to be a natural enough feeling.
And it is it's a complete natural part of life. Death has always been part of life, and we're all going to end up that in that place. So, you know, she thinks she had herself prepared, but I don't know, Fran, if anyone is ever prepared to lose a loved one. Now, there's so many different elements to death and people dying. I mean, accidents, unexpected losses, people getting involved in crashes and stuff like that. It can be terribly, terribly shocking. And we've recently, of course, had the tragedies here, and you talk about young people and dying, and when you don't expect somebody to be dying when they're young. But this man has probably lived a long and healthy, relatively healthy life until he got this diagnosis, and his end is very near. And she needs to just appreciate that she can be with him and can help the transitioning. And perhaps she should do, even she went in to talk to a bereavement counsellor, I think it would eminently help her here.
I think so too, but we feel sorry for her though, because it's a tough time. Our second letter then, Phil. Dear Phil, my wife and I were married for over 40 years. We had a great life together. I adored the woman, and I thought she felt the same, but now I'm starting to wonder if that was ever true. 35 years ago, we had a beautiful baby boy who was the light of our lives. He was our only child and would forever be our only child because we were not able to have any more. But our hearts were broken when he was just 4 years old. I was involved in a car crash with my son in which he was killed. My God. To this day, I still don't know what happened. I have no memory of it, so there will always be questions. My wife and I carried each other through. Although the pain of his loss never left us, we carried on as best we could while always remembering him, and we both vowed to live a good life in his honour. My wife sadly died 3 months ago, and in the process of clearing out some of her things, I came across her diaries, which I wasn't even aware she had. I thought it would be a great insight into this wonderful woman I loved, but instead, what I read left me devastated. She wrote for years about how mad she was with me about the death of our son, and she would never really forgive me. The words she wrote were so angry and visceral, I had no idea. She never spoke to me about it, never said a cross word to me. We would often speak of our son and would celebrate his birthday every year, so why didn't she ever talk to me about her anger and blame? I'm so confused about it. I wonder if the woman I thought I was married to for so many years was just living a lie with me. How can I make sense of this?
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it, Fran? Yeah. Look, it's when something like that, when a tragedy happens in your life and you lose the most loved thing, you never thought you could love somebody like that.
Yeah.
It's a horrendous situation. But his wife dealt with the grief differently than him. And he wasn't aware that she was journaling, which is a very good way of getting through a sad loss or what seems to be a terrible tragedy.
It's like a catharsis, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the saddest thing was, I suppose, they never could go ahead and have more children because that wasn't possible for them. Not that you can replace a child that you lose, because you can't. So look, I think he, again, like the previous question, she was dealing with her loss the way she could. And he's only found out about it now because he wasn't aware she had journals. Now, that, again, is a natural part of the whole process of having lost somebody. And he, I suppose, he obviously had an element of guilt about the fact that he can't remember how the child ended up getting killed. But that was probably the shock of the accident or whatever that happened. So, look, it seems like it would be, again, and I know I often mention counselling in this context, but it's a very relevant thing to talk things out with trained people. And sometimes it's great to go off and talk with your friends and go out for a coffee or go for a walk or go for a drink or whatever. But in some cases where you have a particular tragedy and you're left very wounded and very lost over it, it's really a good idea to talk to a counsellor and get help.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know various therapies I would have been involved with over the years. You'd be advised to write things down as you view something, because that in itself is putting it out there. It's not necessarily for other people to digest what you're reading, though. And is he seeing this as completely relevant to him as opposed to his wife's therapy? I suppose is what I'm saying.
He said the words she wrote were so angry and visceral. I had no idea. She never spoke to him about it, and she never said a cross word. But she wrote down her anger and her cross words because she didn't want to fight with her husband.
Yes, I know.
And they had a long and good relationship. And she's only died 3 months ago. He's feeling bad now because he feels she was carrying all this anger against him. But in fact, she had written it into the diaries, and that's a way. Journaling is a way of getting, getting your thoughts in process, getting your thoughts together, and dealing and living and continue to be, a good person. It's a sad story, this, Fran, because only sad? The one little child, and then at 4 years old, and you can imagine how cute those little 4-year-olds and 2-year-olds, and they're just gorgeous, and it's an awful tragedy. But I think she dealt with her anger by journaling, and he wasn't aware of it until she passed away.
All right, very, very sad indeed. Our third letter then. Dear Phil, I'm struggling to deal with terrible guilt I've had for losing my cool with my child. I have 3 children, all close in age, so it can sometimes be a bit hectic, but I always prided myself in being a good, even-tempered parent. We were out at a swimming pool recently, and my youngest boy, who was 6, had a full-blown trauma about a slide he couldn't go on. I did all the usual tricks to pacify him, but nothing would work. His tantrum just got worse and louder. He totally lost control. I was also losing control, and I decided to remove him from the pool. I took him to the changing room. I told him to get dressed, that we're going home if he can't behave himself. I'm ashamed to say I dragged him by the arm into the changing room, and when he wouldn't stop roaring, I gave him a little slap on the head, but as a result, he accidentally bumped his head on an open locker as we walked past. I felt awful immediately, and the incident seemed to shock us back to our senses. Now, I apologised to him for hitting him. He apologised to me for the tantrum, but I haven't been able to shake the guilt for that. I even convinced myself that there would be video footage of it from the changing room. Oh, the poor dote. And that it would be put online and the kids would be taken from me. I'm racked with guilt and sadness that I could lose it like that. I've never hit or slapped my child before. I'm afraid to talk to anybody about it in case they think I'm an awful mother. What should I do?
Oh, she should just relax, honest to God. I mean, children are fractious. Was he the youngest of the 3? At age 6,
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, you know, look, he was
the youngest.
He was a little bit jiggy, and he reacted, and she decided, I'm going to put manners on him, and we're going to take out the good fun out of this day. And of course, he got into a meltdown. This is completely normal behaviour for a 6-year-old. Being honest with you. Now, what I'm very surprised about is that he actually had to be able to apologise for a tantrum. A 6-year-old. I'd be waiting, I can tell you, for any 6-year-old.
Possibly, though, she apologised to him for hitting him, and maybe it all sort of
well, hopefully this is what, and it does sound like that's what happened. The two of them had a kind of a meltdown. He got out of control. She equally went out of control. She joined him in his angst and in his temper tantrum, and so the two of them got into a bit of it. She's overthinking it now. She said, I'm racked with guilt and sadness that I could lose it like that. It's kind of normal at some point in your life that you would have a fallout with one of your kids. It's kind of normal thing to happen, as long as it's not continuously happening and you're not continuously giving them a root every time they do something wrong. But I mean, it's just a situation where, you know, she needs to be very rational and very balanced and just say, look, if you're going to the pool, you need to behave a certain way, and this is the way we want to do it. I don't want you to make a show of me, and I don't want to make a show of you.
This, of course, would have played out, well, the initial part of it in front of people, and that kind of adds to the whole
Well, you
thing,
see,
doesn't
it does, because it's kind of embarrassing as well for the child if their mother is dragging him by the ear or the shoulder or whatever part she had caught.
Yes.
You know, and, you know, so she was trying to get back into the control situation. But the problem is both of them kind of got out of control. And it's always worse, I think, if you're going to do that in the public eye, because there's people,
of course,
looking at you and judging, like, as people do.
Absolutely, they do indeed. And then the poor dote, she started to spiral and think it was all being recorded and videoed, and that it would end up
isn't
on
it the
social
worst,
media.
Isn't it the thing? Because none of us know who's recording us or where we're being recorded.
Yeah.
But there's now, like, there are cameras everywhere. So you can be rest assured that if you're walking along the street minding your own business or whatever, or you're stopping in every shop, or you're stopping in whatever, you are recorded going into shops, coming out of shops. There's so much surveillance of people now that it's a natural thing to say, well, you know, she has form. She did. So it can be very troublesome, a worrying time. But I think the fact that they apologised to each other and kind of got back on stream, I think they did the right thing. But it's difficult when you lose the head in front of people. You're kind of letting yourself down as well as the child.
Of course, you know. It's important to point out that never happened before. Obviously, it never happened since.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's a lesson learned, and it is. Especially if you're, like, people can have a lot of things on their minds. It's not always about just the child is going for a swim, we're going to do this, we're going to that. You might be worrying about a bill that came in the door. You might be worrying about what are we cooking for the evening, or, you know, there could be lots of things going on with people's lives that we don't know anything about, and sometimes it can result in a meltdown.
Well, that's for sure. People listening, if you have something that you'd like Phil to have a look at, all you have to do is email us. It's tiptoday@tipfm.com. And if you put Dear Phil in the subject bar, we will know what you're at. Phil, pleasure as always. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Fran.